We'll call the regular council meeting I'm reading from the minutes, of November 14th to order, and ask for a recommendation to approve the agenda. Councillors Cunningham and Niche. Any additional items? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. I'm just checking, have we got Councillor Forster with us? Yes, we do. Councillor Forster, thank you for joining us en route as you travel. All right, so the first item up is a presentation from Urban Systems with regards to Prince Rupert Park and outdoor recreation plan. Who's taking it away? Any staff member introducing, or are we just going to go? There we are, Director Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do a quick introduction here, then pass it on to Catherine. So this plan identifies and prioritizes policy and capital project recommendations to guide parks and outdoor recreation related work in the City of Prince Rupert as budget and resources allow. The plan will act as a roadmap for decision making going forward that relates to parks and outdoor recreation, infrastructure and programs, including waterfront access, parks and outdoor amenities, and trails. I'll introduce Catherine Barris here, who works with Urban Systems and led the planning process. She'll provide a brief overview of the document and process, noting that there is significant more detail in the plan itself, as well as the appendices, which are available in the agenda package. And also, please take the opportunity at this time while she's here to ask any questions of the planning consultant.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, proceed with the presentation.
Okay, and you can see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So, Mayor and Council, it's a great pleasure to be here at this point, having been working on this project for over a year. I will, as Ms. Pope said, I will just run through a high-level overview. I wanted to make sure that we give our acknowledgement that Prince Rupert's on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Tsimshian people, and there are recommendations in this plan that can be undertaken by the city as part of Truth and Reconciliation. We recognize this plan is by no means the answer to meaningful reconciliation, but it's intended to promote and support the continued dialogue to learn from and engage with Indigenous partners. So this is our agenda, an overview of the plan itself and our purpose, the community engagement that we went through, vision and goals, and then the key strategies and map of proposed parks and trails. So, as you all know, Prince Rupert's home to one of North America's fastest growing ports. Anticipated population growth will definitely trigger the needs for new and improved parks and outdoor recreation opportunities. The last plan you had on this topic was from 1985, almost an antique, so definitely no longer relevant. And so we call this Rupert Plays. It will give a long-term strategy for enhancing the city's parks, trails, and outdoor spaces. It builds on engagement in the OCP and Redesign Rupert, and it's been prepared with consideration for the OCP and helping to support it in the area of parks, recreation, and trails. So an overview of the plan itself, it begins with a vision and objectives. Then we look at planning of park land and trails. We look at the amenities in parks. We look at priorities and phasing, and then we have a final implementation plan in an appendix that goes into great detail and a simplified version in the plan itself. I shall say that the document you received is the plan and appendices, and it can be distributed with the plan as a separate document from the appendices or together as the city wishes over time. And we also worked in coordination with the transportation plan that was also done by Urban Systems. So our two teams worked very closely together. Some of our engagement events were together, and then we've shared mapping. It's all in one GIS system, so everything's coordinated. We had an extensive amount of community engagement. We began with a community survey and had 342 participants, which is really, in our view, very good, especially for a city of your size. And given this topic, that's a high level of interest. We had pop-up events. We had some virtual visioning workshops. We had interviews with select people. And then after all of that, we came up with draft recommendations. Those recommendations went to a second community survey where we were asking people to confirm that we either got it right or not. We also had the draft vision and goals as part of that survey. And we asked people, okay, here are the recommendations. What are your priorities? And so we took that as a very important input into determining what the priorities should be. And then also at that time, we had a virtual workshop, and we did a youth survey that a bot tried to take over, but we were able to distill out the responses from the city youth. So the vision that the city, it's a unique maritime port city, and so this is building, it's in relationship, which hopefully you can see with your other vision statements, provides inclusive, affordable, and resilient parks, trails, and recreation amenities that enhance community well-being and inspire a healthy and active lifestyle. So the goals have to do with providing access to parks and recreation for all, improving connectivity, respecting and enhancing what's unique about Prince Rupert, protect and enhance the environment, well-designed facilities and amenities, nurturing a sense of community and belonging, because that's a really important part of the community, and then reflecting financial considerations. So these are our key strategies, and they're actually in order of the priorities that we got back from people. So by far the most interest is in the waterfront and having more access to and along it, upgrading parks and adding more to support population growth, replacing aging play equipment and adding more amenities to parks, improving trails, and then and the trail connections. And I think the only reason that's fourth is because you already have so many wonderful trails. And then we have recommendations and strategies related to implementation. So for the waterfront, this is, again, a summary, and some of these have sub-recommendations within them in the implementation plan. And also with this implementation plan, this is to help guide you over time, recognizing that there may not be funding for everything at any one point in time. But as opportunities may arise, potentially in association with other projects, it's important to know what should be on your books in terms of moving forward with this topic. So for the waterfront, develop Harbor Landing Park as one of your key destination parks along the waterfront, integrated with the airport ferry terminal. Work with First Nations on a waterfront park with boat launch and commemorative infrastructure at Miller Bay. Provide new boat launches and infrastructure for non-motorized watercraft, because you have a really vibrant and building community of paddlers, and it would be great. It's really not overly expensive to meet those needs and get more people out on the water who don't have motorboats. Through new development projects, provide more access to and along the waterfront with vibrant spaces along there. And collaborate with others to increase opportunities for waterfront use. Because of the complex jurisdictions and ownership along the waterfront, a lot of these are best implemented as part of partnerships. So for parks, the strategies, we start with rewilding. You are mowing a lot of grass. And there is really a huge movement towards less mowing, partly to save costs and partly to improve the environment. especially pollinators. So on our West Coast, it's really not that difficult to convert mowed grass to a long grass where maybe it's mowed twice a year. And we really heard a lot of people through engagement talking about this should be a city within a park. And we think that through this rewilding concept, it could help you to achieve that. Establish new parks in a couple in existing developed areas to address some of the gaps. Acquire parks in new development areas. And of course, this is only going to happen as development occurs, but it's really important to have the guidelines there and the standards there for the type of parkland you will require with your population intended over the future to pretty double double. Improve community parks with paths, gathering spaces, trees, seating, universal washrooms, and other infrastructure as needed. But these were some of the things that people particularly wanted to see. And moving on to outdoor amenities, you have enough ball diamonds and sport fields for existing population, but quite a few of them have drainage challenges. So fixing that, and then also there's real community interest in having more water fountains available. Providing community gardens in locations with water and electrical service where there's also neighborhood interest. Improve the existing dog off-leash area at McKay Park and establish another one on the east side of the city. Establish an outdoor performance area with a covered structure, suitable power and space for large gatherings. Upgrade and replace playgrounds based on an asset management cycle and neighborhood needs. Support the development of a pump track in the community. You have an active group working on that. Improve the public running track, expand the skate park and provide another one in the future, upgrade existing sports courts, and establish procedures to improve maintenance and upgrading of park amenities. There were a number of comments about the maintenance of some of those items. So moving on to trails. So we've identified some key gaps in the trail system. And so we're proposing some new trails to fill those gaps. Over time, improve connections to the multi-use path along the waterfront, improve some of the nature trails in the urban area. Some of those really need attention and they're highly used and very popular. So some upgrading is in order. Improve nature trails outside the urban area in collaboration with others. We understand fully that the city does not own all of the trails, and some of them you operate, some of them you don't. And then establish processes to improve the maintenance of trails, improve signage, and transportation to trailheads. Because some of the great trails are outside the city, and there's minimal public transit, so it's hard for some people to get there. And then finally, the implementation recommendations. So the idea is that we give you this detailed implementation plan in Excel. And the idea is that staff review it every year and deal with it with council as part of your annual capital planning. Coordinate work among city departments, especially because with your infrastructure challenges and utilities, there might be opportunities to, in some cases, get some of the parks and outdoor recreation improvements as part of other projects. Continue to explore opportunities and work with the various partners you have in town, and you have done a great job building a lot of those relationships. Explore opportunities to acquire land and funding over time, and I know you know well about grant opportunities. Establish a DCC bylaw for parkland acquisition and park development, which you do not have right now. So it's one tool you can use for the developing areas. Conduct organizational reviews on roles and responsibilities of existing staff, needs for additional staff, and potential restructuring. And this is really because as you increase the amount of parkland and the amenities you provide, it's important to look at the needs for maintaining those things. And for sure, every time there's something new, you need to think about the maintenance of it, not just the capital costs. include community engagement with each significant capital project or improvement. And then typically a plan like this would be updated in 7 to 10 years. Whoops. So this is a map in case anyone has any questions about it. The dashed lines are the proposed trail connections, and the yellow stars are generally where we envision new parkland. Of course, in the development areas, it's hard to tell exactly, but these are sort of tentative locations to distribute parks. Our ideal is that everyone is within a 5-minute walk of a neighborhood park and a 10-minute walk of a community park. So that is the overview, and happy to take any questions or comments.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions, Council? Councillor Nish.
Not so much question, just an observation. Generally it looks like a good plan. Unfortunately, the realities is money, which is something we don't have a lot of. But the one thing I didn't really think is probably good for our town is actually the what did you call it? Rewilding. Around here, 10 feet of rain, you start rewilding a park, and in most towns, I understand that you grow some long grass and it stays long grass and it stands up. But here, where it's 10 feet of rain a year, the grass is laying on the ground, it's flat, and if you let things get too out of hand in this town, you'll have salmonberry bushes, hogweed, all that stuff growing into these parks. So rewilding a park, I feel in this area, is probably not something that really works well around here, because of we have things around here. You don't have to put seeds on anything if it will grow, and lots of things grow in it, and I would hate to see us lose a whole bunch of parks because they look terrible, because things have just overtaken, because it will happen. So generally, great plan. That's just an observation of mine.
Thank you. Ms. Barris, any comment?
Am I allowed to make a comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. We're not, maybe there's a misunderstanding about where we mean rewilding. So it's not that we're going to let entire parks go to this state. We're talking about looking for opportunities. Sometimes it's around the edges. Sometimes it might be around a water course. Sometimes it might be, between different land uses and a park. I remember being driven through town, and you have a lot of boulevard space, for example. And so sometimes maybe the front of it near the road remains grass, but the back part could be rewilded and even allow trees to grow over time. So it's not something that goes everywhere. It needs really careful consideration about where it goes.
Thank you. Councillor Adey.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I may take a little bit of credit, because I know a couple of years ago when we were doing priorities, I pushed pretty hard for a look at parks and sort of a global assessment of where we were. And the original interest for me was actually, I think, a relatively small one, and that was to get a sense of which areas of the city were well served. In terms of playgrounds in particular, but parks as well in general, and which areas were not so well served. So the final report that we've got here, or the report as it stands here, goes a lot further than that, and I think that's fantastic. I think there's a whole lot of different ways of participating in nature and recreating that are accounted for here. So I'm really impressed with that, and I think it's going to be really useful going forward. I do agree with Councillor Nish that there is the difference between our current budget reality and the long-term vision of a lot of what's in this report. But I think that we may find that in a year or 2 years, when hopefully some things have become better balanced in terms of revenues and what have you, that we may find that this continues to be a current and useful document and will help us build moving forward. So I think that's good. One of the questions I have is, I've sort of phrased it as, when is a playground not a playground? And what I mean by that is that if you look at the maps and how things are represented, at some points in the report, you see that one area has a place that shows on the map as a playground, and another area has a similar designation as a playground. But if you actually go to those places, you'll find that one of those places will be very well equipped, and the other will not have anything at all. And I'm not sure that those disparities are always represented in the report. And I think that's really the work that needs to be done by the people who are here or who are looking at specific areas and seeing what needs to happen. I do have a number of specific questions, if I can.
Please.
On page 19, it talks about the anticipated population growth. And there's been a couple of contexts in which I've wondered about this, because I remember when we did the 2030 visioning exercises and the report that came from it, a lot of that was based on the projected growth of the community up to as high as 25,000 people. Since then, I think that either the skeptics or the realists, I'm not sure which, may have a more modest sense of what that population growth will be. Number of factors, whether it's changing how industry does its work, that might result in fewer people coming. I'm just wondering if the population projections don't turn out to be as high as that, which, in my personal opinion, I think that I think they're a little higher than the reality is going to be. Does this report? How does this report? How flexible is it to deal with that projection not being the reality that emerges?
Ms. Barris.
Yes, so through the mayor, I think that's a great question. And, we've always had that in the back of our minds. This is the population growth that we were instructed to work with because it's the one on your books. It's the one in a lot of your other planning documents. The plan is very flexible, and especially given that the intention is to update the implementation piece of it every year, and then also especially because the parks to serve growth are all identified as beyond the 10-year timeframe of this plan in any case. So really the focus of this plan is on meeting the needs of the current population and the current developed area.
Councillor Adey.
Thank you. On page 20 and then later on page 37, I'm just quoting a phrasing here. It says that there is a good supply of park spaces and amenities, and neighborhood parks are fairly well distributed and most residents have access. And the point I was getting to earlier is that, so it would seem from an overhead map or a zoning perspective, I'm just wondering whether you feel that the report also represents, whether that's represents an equitable distribution of amenities. In other words, does it take into account the quality or even the existence of playground equipment in these various places?
Ms. Barris.
Okay, thank you. Through the mayor. So we kind of deal with parkland in one section of this plan and then amenities in another section. And so I'd say that you're fairly well served in terms of the land you have and its distribution, but in terms of the amenities, there are absolutely gaps, which is why we have a lot of recommendations about amenities, which are the improvements that you need within a lot of these parks. Adding new equipment, replacing equipment, improvements, etc.
Councillor.
Okay, I'll keep going. I've got 2 or 3 more. You mentioned the development cost charges bylaw. Could you give us a thumbnail sketch of what that means and how it might have an impact?
Ms.
Yes,
Barris?
absolutely, through the mayor. So it's similar to development cost charge bylaws can be on utilities, they can be on transportation, and they can be on parks. So the way it works with parks is we or you, whoever, someone would calculate the amount of parkland needed to serve future population and the cost of park development to meet the needs of future population. There's some anomalies in the DCC, the provincial DCC regulation, that only some amenities are coverable within DCCs and not others. But in any case, so those calculations would be run, and it would be turned into a charge per development parcel that developers would pay into that fund that would support the acquisition and then the development of those parks.
Councillor Ady. Hang on, Dr. Buchan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add to that conversation, there is provincial legislation in the works now that will add amenity cost contributions as well, which will pick up the parts of park development amenities that are not permitted in the DCCs. So the province is actually developing legislation which will allow new development to fund its land and improvements more robustly.
Councillor Ady.
Thanks. In the Appendix G is where you lay out the specific different things that you'd like to see emerge. I'm just wondering how the priority levels were determined. Some of them are identified as high priority, some of them are medium, and then you've got time frame differences. How do you sort out which ones fit into which category?
So we actually ran it through a matrix of criteria for implementation, and they were based on the, okay, hang on, I think it's in here. Yeah, so on page 62 are the criteria that we used to determine those priorities. So the first category is needs, and this was community priority, need for upgrading for safety, and addresses a gap. The next category was feasibility, so cost to build, operating cost, opportunity to implement as part of another project. And then the fourth category was goals alignment, so inclusivity, accessibility, connectivity, uniqueness, and then supporting environmental and cultural considerations. So we ran all of the recommendations through that matrix, and that's how we came up with the priorities.
Councillor Ady.
Okay, thanks. I think I'm done. Thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, well, thank you very much, Ms. Barris. Very good presentation.
Thank you all.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a report from the Chief Financial Officer with regards to the 2024 draft budget.
How about we start at the beginning? All right, so I'm just confirming, Councillor, you can see the screen?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Welcome to our second public consultation opportunity for the 2024 budget. This is a short presentation to go over the highlights. The city's operating budget deficit is 1.8 million, meaning we are projecting a proposed tax increase of 7.7% using 2023 assessed values. This works out to approximately a $99 increase for the average homeowner. 2024's assessed values will be available in January, and the final tax increase will be known in April. The general operating deficit has been arrived at through keeping service levels the same as in 2023. The $1.8 million deficit can be broken down by the following drivers: contractual increases in staffing, RCMP, and transit, inflation impacts, an additional allocation to the library, and the backfilling of one staff position that has been vacant, along with an addition of 1.5 staff members for a total of 2.5 FTEs. We've also shown the tax increase attributed to each of these drivers. In response to our climbing number of water breaks, staff obtained an infrastructure replacement study which identified high priority areas for replacement. This study has been supporting our grant requests and helps us target grant and borrowed funds to the highest risk of failure areas. The sections in red are those proposed to be replaced over the next 3 years under our infrastructure replacement project. This project will address water, sewer, and road infrastructure. This table shows the value of capital expenditure and the funding sources for the infrastructure replacement project over the next 3 years. We are still awaiting an answer on our federal application for funding in the amount of $82 million. Should we obtain these funds, the red sections on the previous map will be fully funded. The project is $205 million and amounts to 26 kilometers, or 1/3 of our underground infrastructure. This replacement strategy has driven much of the capital budget proposed for 2024. As such, the city is planning to conduct $141 million in capital projects in 2024. There is no tax or utility fee increase allocated to these projects this year. Repayments for borrowing are expected to start in 2025. However, should we obtain additional sources of revenue, we aim to propose using them rather than borrowing in as much as we can. Most of the reserves used are grants that have been placed in a reserve for a specified purpose, and 97% of the surplus shown here is for the sewer utility. The notable capital projects to be undertaken are water and sewer infrastructure, which amounts to $100 million worth of capital projects. The RCMP detachment makes up $17 million. The waterfront development is $10 million. The airport ferry refit and 6th Avenue Bridge improvements amount to $3.65 million, and the closure of the recently filled landfill cell is $2.5 million. Included in the budget are special projects to address records management, create a climate adaptation and action plan, address accessibility, transportation safety, and safe work procedures and training, amongst others. Most are funded by grants and dividends, and there is no increase to property taxes proposed in respect of special projects. The community enhancement grant requests are 40% more than were provided in 2023. Of the 18 requests, 3 are new applicants. Funding 100% of the 2024 requests would add another 0.77% tax increase to the 7.7% proposed. Staff have budgeted the 2023 grant values for the 2024 budget in order to keep the tax increase proposed to a minimum. The cost to reopen the 4th Avenue West Stairs is estimated at $250,000, which would require a further tax increase of 1.07%. Funding this has not been included in the budget for 2024. All increases or decreases to that already budgeted is at Council's discretion. We will be receiving feedback on the budget up to and including November 20th. Feedback can be provided by email, phone, mail, or drop-off at City Hall, in addition to this evening. Feedback can also be provided through our budget simulator, which will be open through Monday, November 20th. The simulation can be accessed through our website and on our Facebook page. Thank you for your attention. As a reminder, the full budget document and all presentations are available on the city's website. Thank you.
Before you disappear, any questions from council? I know you've seen the presentation before, but none? All right, thank you very much. So we now move on to item number 5, which is public comment. Any member of the public is free to come and make a comment on anything that's included in this evening's agenda, including the draft budget, which you just saw presented. I won't belabor it. You're certainly able to speak to it's on the agenda tonight. So if you want to speak to it, you don't need to speak, but if you want to speak to it, you're welcome to speak to it. So I encourage you to sit down. The microphone, I think, is on, and introduce yourself, and then keep your comments as brief as you can. But go ahead.
My name is Teresa Lee. I own few businesses here, and I've been here 3 decades. So I saw up and downs, and I see a lot of things. But we all trying very hard to make things happen, and successful city. And I love the city. We have everything, and we just I don't know how, but have to somehow make it happen to be beautiful and successful city, which I think with all of you, helping each other and creative, we can do it. And as a point of, one of the citizen, that I try my best to keep my business clean and nice and attractive to, visitors or anybody living in this town. And I own Moby Dick Hotel, and I have a lot, empty lot, which my vision is building a 24-unit condos. Not right away, because I don't think there will be a demand, but that's my vision is. But the lot is empty, so I try to keep it nice. I plant some flowers and trees and apple trees, whatever. But still the weeds are growing like crazy. So I've been cutting and killing, and somebody said, bring a couple goats and they will do the job, which I thought was good. So I did bring it. But 2 hours later, I bought it and brought the beautiful 2 goats. And 2 hours later, city said, you cannot have it because they got hooves. I said, I never heard that, those hoofs animals cannot have as a pet. That was my pet. And they said, no, they can't have it. Okay. So I got rid of it the first time. The next time I talked to, counselors or whatever, they said we might able to give a special permit. So I thought, just apply for the special permit and whatever, then we can have the goat. So I bought the goat again, and I came to the city and applied for the special permit. I paid $645 in June 18. And then right now, it's middle of November. Still, I haven't heard anything yes or no. So I just don't understand how come it takes this 5 months to get a yes or no for the special permit for this 2 goats. And I see many things in this town that burnt houses, falling buildings. I don't think they're getting fines, but I got a letter saying that if I don't get rid of that goat as soon as possible, I'll get $2,000 fine, up to $2,000 fine
Per day.
So I don't know. Like I used to live in Prince George. If you don't cut the grass, the city comes and said to cut your grass. If you don't, in a week, we'll start giving you a fine. Just not cutting the grass, they will fine me. But here, this town, I don't know what it is. People just have a terrible yard, the building burned, building falling down, the broken cars in their yard. I don't think they're getting fined. But my beautiful goats, they cannot stay here even one day because they got hoops, and they're gonna get a fine. It didn't make no sense to me that you have to have, I don't know, hoops to have a pet. That was my pet, my salt and pepper. And they were beautiful, they're good, and everybody loved it. Whenever I go, everybody said, "Where's your goat? When they coming?" I said, "I'm waiting for city for a special permit." And I hope that you guys give us this special permit so that we can have this beautiful pet, so that not only me enjoying it, but a lot of people, a lot of kids, they didn't even saw this goat in their life. And we can teach them a lot of things. And a lot of people said that it really heals, is healing whenever they see this goat. So I don't know. It's up to you to decide, but I would appreciate it if you give us the special permit. So Val, you want to say something?
Yeah, I grew up in the city. I'm 83 years old, and I feel like I want to have some say in what goes on. Growing up here, we were very proud of our city. Third Avenue was absolutely beautiful. It is a mess now. It looks terrible. There's too many buildings that aren't being used, or they're looking terrible, and it's heartbreaking to see this because the city is beautiful. We have the third largest natural deep sea harbor of the entire world, and we don't utilize it because everything down there now belongs to somebody else, and we can't even walk down there. It's really not fair the way it's gone. I wish that we could see more happening to bring it back to what it was. I do thank you all for the work you do and the time you put in and this kind of stuff that you're dealing with. I really appreciate all of you, but I would like to see more done as far as cleaning the city up and making it back to the beauty it was. And I thank you.
Thank you. Thank
And if you can find $2,000 to this goat, I think you can find them lots of money, and the city will be rich pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Any other public comments on anything on the agenda? Nobody's moving. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to the consent agenda. And as often is the case, there's a lot on the consent agenda. And so I'm just going to quickly read through some of the reports here. If you are watching at home, you might want to get to, you can check these out online afterwards. There's a report from the fire chief with regards to the monthly fire rescue report. There's a report from planning with regards to the development activity report. There's a report with regards to community planning activity report. There's a report from Director of Corporate and Legislative Services regarding a letter of support for Key Corp, and a report from Director of Operations Engineering with regards to a reduction of speed limit. That was a direct request from Council. And then finally, a report from the Director of Corporate and Legislative Services with regards to the Port Edward Watson Island Water Supply Agreement, mutual aid and fire service mutual aid agreement, as well as various pieces of correspondence there. I'd entertain a motion to move the consent agenda. Councilors Adie and Randawa. Now, because of the nature of the report with regards to the legislative services the Port Edward Watson Island Water Supply Agreement and the Fire Services Mutual Aid Agreement. I want there to be no ambiguity about council's intention on this. So I'm actually going to lift that report from the consent agenda and have us vote on it separately so that it's crystal clear what council's intention is on that. Anything else you want to highlight or bring attention to within the consent agenda? Councillor Cunningham.
One on reduction of speed limits.
Sorry?
The one on reduction of speed limits. The
Speed
report on
limits?
it? Yeah.
Did you want to speak to that right now?
Well, basically, it says in here, the staff wants to ensure that council knows that we can reduce traffic speeds but not enforce moving infractions for speeding. That's the problem. It doesn't matter if it's 30 kilometers or 50 kilometers. People are speeding.
Right,
So
but
we-
the RCMP can.
You know, that's the
that-
RCMP have to get out there
Correct,
and
Correct.
enforce the speed limit.
correct.
You know, you've got people, if it's 50 kilometers, they're doing 70. If it's 30, they're going to be doing 50 or 60. The only way we can change the habit of people is to start finding them like it was mentioned, and this is how we've got to do it. It doesn't matter what speed limit we have, people are going to speed.
Sure.
Why people are in a hurry in such a small town, I don't know.
Councillor 80.
I agree that it's in the enforcement, but I do think it's worth noting that if you are doing 70 kilometers an hour in a 30 kilometer zone, the ticket that you get and the fine associated with it is significantly different than if it had been a 50 or 60 kilometer zone.
Right.
So there is a benefit to be had from having a lower speed limit in the form of deterrence.
Fair comment. Councillor Nish.
Since we're talking about it, I actually just heard something on the radio the other day, and they were talking about the amount of people that actually believe that driving 20 kilometers over the speed limit is acceptable. So it's, to your point, if you did lower the speed limit, then you would if you lower it to 30, people might only drive 50. It does make sense, but the reality is that we can change as many signs as we want, and there's a cost to that. I mean, if we got to change every municipal sign in town to change the speed limits, I mean, there is a cost to that, and at the end of the day, it's enforcement, and we really have no control over that unless we're going to hire and increase our budget even more and get traffic police here, which we do not currently have.
All right. With all the items except for item number 8, B8, all in favor of the consent agenda? Any opposed? It is carried. Returning to the report from the Director of Corporate Legislative Services with regards to the Port Edward Watson Island Water Supply Agreement and the Fire Services Mutual Aid Agreement. The recommendation there was that Council approve or direct staff to exercise those agreements. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor 80, Councillor Nish, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 7, which is reports. The first report is from the Director of Development Services with regards to Rupert Place, Prince Rupert's Park and Outdoor Amenities Plan, with the following recommendation: that Council approve the Prince Rupert Parks and Outdoor Recreation Plan titled Rupert Place as attached in Attachment 1, and that Council directs staff to advance the actions identified in the Attachment 1 through the mechanisms described in the report as budget and resources allow. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor 80, Councillor Nish, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. We now move on to a report from planning with regards to development variance permit. A recommendation that Council proceed with the statutory notification process for the development variance permit number 2323 for 1439 Overlook. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Cunningham and Nish, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We move on to item number C, which is another development variance permit. with a recommendation that council proceed with final approval for the development variance permit DVP 2319 for 1609 11th Avenue East. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councilor Rondawa and Councilor Nish. All in favor, or sorry, any discussion? All in favor, oh, did you have a discussion point? Go ahead, Councilor Adey.
I'd like to ask at this point if there was any public feedback associated with this.
Excellent. Go ahead, Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was no feedback received.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have a report from planning with regards to another development variance permit, and that is that council proceed with the final approval for development variance permit number 2322 for 212 9th Avenue East. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councilor Nish and Councilor Cunningham. Let's let you ask your question, Councilor Adey.
Was there any public feedback?
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there was no feedback received.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Finally, there is a report from planning with regards to temporary use permit number 2301 935 2nd Avenue West, with a recommendation that council proceed with the statutory notification process for temporary use permit number 2301 for 935 2nd Avenue West. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Cunningham, is there a seconder? Councillor Nish. Any discussion? You're pointing, oh, that way. Okay, Councillor Nish.
Well, I mean, you know, it's such a can of worms, this one. I see at least this time there seems to be a more thorough plan of how these goats will be looked after as far as buildings and fencing and all that stuff. So that makes me feel a little bit better. And I did see in there that there was a response from a veterinary place in Terrace that would look after the goats. You know, but the only thing that makes me a little hesitant is I think about there was a reason why hooved animals were removed from bylaws in this town in the past, and that was because of hoof rot. So, you know, that's the only thing that makes me leery of it. But I do see that she, you know, has made a good plan this time as far as housing them and fencing them and stuff. So that makes me a little bit more open to, you know, and the veterinary option makes me a little bit more open to doing it. But then I also think, well, how far do we take it? If I came here next week and said I wanted to get a cow downtown, what are we going to do about that? I mean, I want to provide milk for my family. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, this isn't a farming community, and we just have to realize that for every action, there's a reaction. If we allow goats here, what's going to happen on another building lot downtown? Are we going to turn our downtown into a farm, or, you know? So I don't know what the right answer is, and maybe this is the first one that we try it out and see what happens. But just thought maybe someone else has a thought on it.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham.
I spoke to a vet today about hoof rot and things like that, and this is a fairly well-respected vet, and she told me that the only time that you have to worry about hoof rot is in muddy and muskeg conditions. This particular slope is not muddy. It never will be muddy. It's well grassed and everything. I don't see it being a problem. The owner has indicated the different actions she's going to take to make sure they're safe. And the other part was, as long as they have a dry space, which is the shed they're going to build for them, that it should never be a problem. The reason hoofed animals weren't allowed in Prince Rupert in the beginning was because of the muddy roads and the muskeg, according to what she told me. So those two are not something we got to factor in here. So I say we go to public notification with it and see what the public says. I don't see a problem with it. I've got a lot of indications that people like the goats. They like seeing them and things like that. And, you know, if they're useful for keeping down the weeds and that, even better.
Maybe we'll use them in our wilded parks. Councillor 80.
I agree that the process that's unfolded this time is a little more comprehensive. There's more thought given into in terms of preparing the space for the animals. So I think on that level, it's a little more palatable. I think that what Councillor Anish is alluding to is also true, though, that it opens a can of worms which might lead to other people with other similar requests. I'm not sure that that's really going to happen, but I think we could reasonably look at this as an experimental thing to do and learn from it and see if, in fact, it creates the impression that this works or that it doesn't, and then future requests would be dealt with accordingly.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Forster, I'm seeing that you're seated in your airplane. Any last comments you'd like to make before they tell you to turn your device off?
No, similar to the comments that have been made, I appreciate that there's a wholesome plan as well as outreach to a vet and a plan to transport the animals to Paris should there be a need for veterinary care. So I assume vaccinations will be kept up to date. All of the regular things have been stated that this is a pet, not just a livestock animal, which then has different requirements. So I'm in agreement with that understanding.
Excellent. And in the event of an emergency, an oxygen mask will drop from the overhead bin, and put yours on first, and then whoever you're traveling with. Safe travels. All right. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We move on to bylaws. City of Prince Rupert zoning bylaw amendment 3504 with the recommendation that council gives fourth and final reading for the parking specified zoning bylaw amendment 3504. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Cunningham, Councillor 80. Any discussion? Again, for the sake of people that are watching at home, this is a bylaw that allows any new development in the downtown core that falls into several categories, one of them being mixed use, multi-use buildings, would waive parking requirements as an incentive to help people. We want to spur on new development in the downtown core, and this is one of many initiatives that council's taking. Councillor Cunningham.
I support this 100%. I voted against the OCP simply because of the 12,500 pie in the sky parking that was involved in that. And I was a little concerned, and it was alleviated when Dr. Bucket explained that it does include remodeling of existing buildings. That was my main concern, because I interpret it as just new builds, but it does state in the bylaw that it's remodeled.
Yeah, new development.
Yeah, redeveloped.
Yeah.
Right word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. We move on to City of Prince Rupert zoning bylaw amendment number 3506 that council repeal and replace third reading, amending the City of Prince Rupert zoning bylaw amendment number 3506 to remove the parking requirement stipulation. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Randhawa, Councillor 80. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We now move on to questions and inquiries from members of council. Councillor Cunningham.
A question directed through the mayor to Dr. Buchan. We had a conversation in September about when Rosie's was going to be turned out, and I was informed at that time that it was going to be gone by the end of October, and it's still sitting there like a big symbol of lack of action. And so I'm just wondering what's happening with it and the Angus Apartments right now.
Excellent. All right, Dr. Buchan.
Your worship, thank you. Very good question. And yes, that was our goal. However, the folks that need to disconnect the services that are hooked up to the building have not been able to get to it because of other pressing water system matters. And that is the reality of what we're dealing with right now. Our staff get pulled off to deal with issues. And I can say even this weekend, staff were having to go and manually look after another number of components of our system to make sure that we have a system that's working.
So it's ready.
It's ready to go. We simply need to get enough time for our City Works crew to get down there and do the disconnect. It is a priority. It's not as urgent a priority as some other things.
Yeah, and does the Angus Apartments fall into the same?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, inquiries from council? All right. I want to encourage members of the public to give your feedback on the budget. You saw it tonight in the presentation. There's a number of ways you can do that. I think we're at a really meaningful turning point in the community. One of the questions that was asked in the public meetings previously last week around the budget was, is there hope for the future? Are we looking at a future that has, 7, 10, big, large tax increases year after year after year? And I just want to say, I think there's incredible hope for the future. We are in a scenario where if we put the pedal to the metal right now and get some big things done, we're going to be in a position, I think, very quickly to capture the benefits of that. And I can see a day coming when not only will we have the resources it takes to maintain our infrastructure, but that we won't have to do it by 7.7% tax increases, right? And so that's the hope, and I think we've got a line of sight on that. So I want to encourage people, participate in the budget exercise, have a look at how you want to do things, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity in front of us. Were you wanting to say something?
I was just going to say, it was pointed out to me earlier that Osoyoos is looking at a 39% tax increase this year.
Wow. I know, Dr. Buchan.
Your Worship, I just wanted to, work a little bit off the statement that you just made about the future. And just to underscore the importance of the parks plan. This is a year in the making. It follows off of the OCP. We are responding to infrastructure crisis at this point, but we're preparing for the future in a very, very positive, optimistic future.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. All right. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I'm actually going to include a motion. Councillor Forrester, you're still there?
I sure am.
Okay, you can move to adjourn. She's moving to adjourn. Councillor Rondawa is second. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. You made it. All right. Thank you very much for coming.